Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod. Yeah, I'm well. Here we are on the 27th of April, 2025, episode 170. And it's a beautiful spring morning in my house. How about you?
Yeah, it's a bit overcast here. I'm hoping that'll burn off as the day goes on. Yesterday was rainy when it started and improved all day long, so I'm hoping it's sort of a similar thing to that, really. We get a bit of sort of sea fog and things like that being closer to the coast, so I'm hoping that's all it is.
Yeah, and we've got sun all week this week. And one of us isn't working this week, so quite excited about the sun, I must confess.
That's nice. I do work in a university though, so when I'm not in meetings, I can pop out and the beach is just across the road, and the students wandering around, and there's a campus and all that kind of stuff. So I don't feel entirely removed from the weather.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's a thought.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's beautiful, isn't it? And I'm off to London, and I was thinking, I wonder if I need to go in the Apple shop and have a look round. And I thought, actually, there's nothing I want to go look at, sadly.
Yeah, it's a bit weird at the moment, isn't it? There's not anything really compelling other than you seeing the MacBook Air, the sky blue one the other day.
I've seen that. That's silver.
Well, everything's silver. It's funny, we talked about me being caseless on my phone these days, and it's silver, and I look around at all the phones, and they're all silver, except my daughter's latest iPhone's, where are we, 16, 17, what are we on?
16.
Which is that beautiful, vibrant blue colour, which I think that they should make more things in.
Yeah, agreed. Completely there with you. Yeah, there's nothing I really want to go look at. If you do buy a MacBook Air, midnight looks the awesome colour, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I could live with the fingerprints and everything I've been seeing. It's funny, I watch a lot of YouTube, probably too much YouTube, and everybody just has that laptop. They have the midnight MacBook Air M4, and they say don't buy a MacBook Pro unless you absolutely know that you're a pro. The MacBook Air is a laptop for everybody, it seems.
Yeah, I think if they put promotion on the Air, the case for the Pro goes even further away.
Except you're giving a large American corporation who's got slightly questionable values these days an awful lot of money, but on that more later maybe.
Yeah. Should we dive into follow-up then?
I think we should do a bit of follow-up. So this might be a bigger story for another day. I know we talked about Synology last week and their sort of changed practices around drives and all the rest of it. That is, you're not able to put in potentially whatever hard drive you want into hardware that you've bought. They want you to buy their drives, they want you to sell the blades as well.
So before you move on, though, I did listen to a podcast about this, and you may have listened to the same podcast. I quite enjoyed their take on it of, well, if they're not charging that much more for the Synology drives, and it's all going to work and it's all going to be fine, maybe it's just the price you have to pay. And part of me thought, actually, I kind of get that argument logic that, you're more guaranteed it's going to be okay. They've tested it. Are they just making a play for more money, or are they actually trying to improve their support by having a more constrained set of drives that they're supporting, that they've got to deal with any edge cases? That was just something that I heard on a podcast, and it did kind of get me thinking, rather than just being a money grab, maybe it is a play for better reliability, better performance. I don't know. What did you think?
Well, why not both on one level? But at the same time, you and I both know what hard drives are like, particularly spinning hard drives. You can buy a brand new one that claims to have been tested and it can fail in a day.
Yeah, true. They've got a much worse hit rate than a lot of equipment that you buy for computers.
An awful lot. And then again, you can have a drive that's run for 10,000 hours and will continue to do so. The mean time before failure of a hard drive is what's quoted when you buy a hard drive, MTBF, when you look at them. And enterprise drives tend to be rated for 3 to 5 years is sort of the mean time before failure. But even they can die very, very quickly after testing. So I don't buy it. I'm afraid I don't buy it. That if you buy from Western Digital or Seagate or any other hard drive manufacturer a specifically well specified drive that's rated to run continuously, what is the difference between that and Synology sticking a label over the top of it? I don't believe it's very high. If I was Western Digital or whoever, I'd probably be quite narc that you're saying are best tested enterprise level Iron Wolf Red, whatever level they are, drives aren't good enough, frankly. So that's, I think, all right, I get it. We talked about it last week, and to give Synology a bit of credit, if you're an enterprise customer, yeah, you just buy the whole widget from one company. It's their problem if drive fails. There's no back and forth thing about, did you install update the firmware on the drive? Did you do this? So from that point of view, from an enterprise customer, as we said last week, fine. However, if I'm a consumer and I buy one of their 2-bay or 4-bay consumer NASs, I don't see why I should be constrained with whatever drives I've got lying around or whatever ones I can source. If I put in a rubbish drive in a new Synology and it fails, I've only got myself to blame. I know that. So I don't understand the logic in trying to force people to have those kinds of drives.
Yeah, Yeah, I can see it, and I can see it for enterprise, because enterprise will also buy extended support, whereas you or I as a home user would just live with it being out of support and deal with it when it happens, kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's two arguments here, isn't there? And maybe this is where Synology are going more enterprisey, because that is where the money is at, isn't it?
I don't know. I think there's a bit of an explosion in home storage, and as all of us get more cautious about our cloud providers, for reasons we've talked about here, there is more of a focus on looking after your stuff at home for those that know what they're doing. But again, those that know what they're doing used to buy Synologies because they were flexible. You could run Docker on them. You could put whatever hard drives you'd lying around in them. You could, there was a lot of, they had media. They had easy access for you to be able to get in and mess around with your files and stuff. That's not the only game in town anymore, though. And if you are a system builder, there are tools like, and I wanted to mention Unraid because I couldn't remember the name of it last week. There are tools like Unraid where you can just put whatever bunch of drives you've got lying around in whatever format, and it will make it work to whatever level of backup that you want. Now, I'm not actually a fan of Unraid because it costs, I think it's $50 or something to have this. And but the interface is well done. It's really Debian Linux under the hood. But they've put a really nice flavor on top where you can mix and match hard drives, set parity drives, set RAID levels, a particular format to format the drives in. You can run Docker on it. You can run media servers. It will do all your NAS shares, backups, Apple Time Machine, all that kind of stuff built into it. They want you to pay to upgrade to their latest skin on the product every year. But what it does really well. There are other completely open source solutions, such as TrueNAS, where you don't have to go to this, and it's a little bit harder to use as a consequence. But I think there's enough variety in the market that will let you run whatever you want in it. And all I think it will do is will harm Synology's opinion amongst system builders. People like me who were proponents of Synology, but will be less so because of this approach to data. And if they'd just said, you'll have a better experience by running our drives, I think that's one thing. But actually stopping you from putting in what you want or reducing the level of service you get by putting in one of these drives is a very different thing for a company that used to be perceived as sort of quite home friendly.
Very home friendly, I think, and quite reliable. Yeah, okay. I think this argument could go on for a bit longer.
Yeah, it could, but I just want to point out there are things available. And if anybody wants to have a lash or wants us to feature, what I've done for my NAS in the past, I know I've gone sort of turnkey for the moment with my Unify device, but I have had TrueNAS servers. I have played with UniRAID. I have done, Open Media Vault is another one that's completely open source that lets you do this kind of stuff. And you've got an old PC lying around in a couple of hard drives. You can build a very reliable backup server very, very quickly to give you network storage on your network. It's almost trivial to do these days with a level of control that will tell you. Smart testing on drives is very well understood these days. You can stick them in this and it will tell you this drive's going to fail. This drive has been running for 3,000 hours. All facts and features about it. When they start to go wrong, they can report and email you that, bad sectors are spotted on this disk. It gives you time to swap them out if they go wrong. And because they're RAID or ZFS or whatever the file system is that you choose to put on them, they're very informative about what you need to do to change that to fix the problem. And I've had drives failed on a TrueNAS system I had. I put another 12 terabyte drive in, it started resilvering, and I was up and running again with 5 drives very, very quickly afterwards. You don't need to just go and buy the thing off the shelf.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It has got a lot more consumer orientated. You're right. I think you're slowly winning me over on this one. I was trying to see both sides of the argument. Unraid though at $50, I don't think is too bad if you want to pay for something that you know is going to be supported.
Yeah, it's a good piece of software, and there are creators out there that have done who do the thing where they've got the 50 drives running in a cupboard and then they'll try Unraid on there just to see what it's like. And it works extremely well, and it's very consumer friendly compared to some of the other things. I was quite impressed with the product. I felt a bit mean. Because it's all built on open source stuff, I kind of want to run the base level of it, so I'm always going to look for the thing that's closer to the open source side of it than the pay side of it. But it's a good product.
Yeah, I think that you're probably willing to invest more time in it than I would be. I kind of just want to plug something in and off I go. So it's probably the two sides of the coin we're looking at. You quite like tinkering, whereas I just want to get it up and running and not have to deal with it, which my Synology, which is 10 years old, is just sat there chuntering away quietly. And it's been pretty good for me, but obviously I bought it a long, long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the flip side of it is I also know what to do then when it goes wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
I understand what it was and I built it.
I'd be scuppered.
that even if a Synology fails on some people, they get a bit nervous. Which drive is it? I've got 4 in there, 1 to 4. What happens if I pull out the wrong one? And the chances are you might.
Yeah.
So, but because I built it and I know what went where, I know what breaks. And that sort of mindset, it's worth investing a little bit of time at the outset, I would suggest, so you do know what's going on with your systems.
Yeah, and I must confess, it's so long since I've even touched mine. I probably don't even know where to go and look in the control panel or anything anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a thought. And just as we're talking about it, and I'll let you put these links in the show notes later, this TrueNAS, for example, is also entirely it's based on open source things, and yes, they can sell you a backup contract and enclosures for drives and all the rest of it as well, or you can just download the open source version and install it yourself. And what it runs on, the file system underlying it, is called ZFS, which, if you remember, macOS almost ran on for a while.
Yep.
And it's a very clever, built by Sun or Solaris, I forget which one, file system that was continuously doing checksumming and things like that to ensure that you weren't getting bit rot, that sectors weren't going bad on drives. It's a very critical overview of what's going on with your disk system. It has built into it things like snapshots, rollbacks, and all the things that you'd expect within a modern file system. And it's quite old and it's well understood at this point. So the level of support you're willing to put into these things is really quite impressive. And what this gives you, as well as I can mount a network share, is Docker environments, the ability to virtualize virtual machines and run them on your hardware. You can really make use of old hardware you've got running with these kinds of things. So I think it's worth exploring for anybody who's even slightly network attached storage curious.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
We've done a lot on that. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's go on to our next perennial topic.
Yeah, this feels a bit more final in some ways than we've had, though. So we've talked about this for a long time.
I'm not sure it's final, though. This is just the start. The fining is my concern here that EU, through the DMA, the Digital Markets Act, have fined Apple and Meta large amounts of money each, but they can carry on doing this. But it's a start, isn't it?
It is a start. So this is the story of the EU, and the link in the show notes is to the EU website, that the Commission finds Apple and Meta in breach of the Digital Markets Act. Big surprise, we knew this was coming. The fine level, though, I think was surprising to everyone. They fined Apple €500 million and Meta €200 million. €500 million to Apple is something like 0.02% of their operating profits for a year. So it's not even a slap on the wrist. I mean, it seems like a lot of money, but not to the scale of Apple or Meta. So the read on this has been, okay, they've come out and they've fined Apple, and that's not a surprise that they were going to. But they could have fined them 10% of annual income. So to find them such a low level is actually, it amounts to almost nothing. It's just the gesture as much as anything.
Yeah, I think it is that, but I think they can come back and have another bite of the cherry. I think that's the thing here. They could fine again and again. So it's if Apple don't comply, because they've got 60 days to make some changes, otherwise they get another fine. And how long do you want to keep going on paying these fines?
Well, as we saw with the Dutch dating app, Apple are quite happy to take the fines week after week, it seems.
True. It's true, but there's going to come a point when Tim goes, enough's enough.
Yeah, and the story is that Apple and Meta are furious over this. Of course, that's going to be the position that they take.
They've got to, haven't they? Can't say, oh, okay, because then they're going to get fined more next time. So they've got to take the furious stance.
Yeah, they are. And, Meta's thing is about advertising, and I don't think we'll deal with it here. But I don't think there is any doubt Apple were doing malicious compliance for what they were doing. I mean, they might tell the story that they did the best they could. They came up with the alternative marketplaces and all the rest of it in order to do it. There is a separate EU store to a certain extent now, but every single thing they dragged their feet on. And I saw once again in this article that, again, they're going, the security of our users and their privacy is the thing that they're harping on, while still allowing sort of pernicious gambling apps, horrible VPN apps, QR apps that will steal your data in the App Store and doing nothing about it. And at the same time, some of the security stuff that they've brought back, are they doing all these things that they say that they're doing?
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I think it's questionable, isn't it? They're touting all the good stuff that they're doing, but actually there's still letting quite a lot of malicious stuff through, which erodes their moral high ground, I think, when it comes to these arguments.
It really does. So I think this Ars Technica article that we've linked to is very good. It gives a run over. We've heard in the background as well that Apple have gone to Trump and said, this isn't fair, can you do something about this? I mean, I do think the level of fine the EU put on this are to not inflame the situation beyond what it could be. Fining our great American companies this amount of money. the EU need to do something. They have a law in this area. We all think that they've been dragging their heels on this an awful lot. And it's funny how we aren't even discussing Meta in a way, because we just know Meta's guilty.
Oh, yeah. Jeez. There's no conversation to be had there, is there?
There isn't, because they're. I suppose I don't want to slander anybody, but I think we all know what their practices are. We just need to look at Cambridge Analytica, and we need to look at all the things they've done in the past and the things they continue to do. It's weird that Apple are in the same bucket as that. Why would you want to be in the same area as Meta, and being the same use of law against you is being put into a company like Meta? And it's just, you think they would not want any part of that.
Yeah. Agreed. You don't want to be in that bucket, as you put it. It's going to be interesting to see what Apple come back with. Obviously, we've only got 60 days, which is not very long, when they're obviously in about 6 days' time, we're going to have the Apple Developer Conference. Well, in less than that, there's a lot going on in Apple space. They've got 18.5 coming out. There was talk of 18.6 coming. It's going to be a busy couple of months for Apple, I think.
Yeah, they're a big company. They've got a lot of money. They'll have to get on with it.
There is that side of it as well, that they just need to reprioritize.
So Matt Gemmell, who is a writer and I think sometime Apple developer, he's certainly been in the Apple ecosystem for a long time, had a very sort of thoughtful quote on his Mastodon. I'm pretty much going to read out word for word, I think. He's Scottish as well, so I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. The US is presently a fascist regime with no international credibility and engaged in extortion and economic terrorism on multiple fronts. Apple has curried favour with the big apricot-hued fascist, don't know who that is, and contribute directly to him financially, thus effectively backing and funding the many abuses. Apple is also perpetually engaged in profiteering, ecosystem lock-in, monopolistic behaviour and manipulation, and malicious compliance. So my vote is with the EU.
It's quite a quote, isn't it?
It's quite a quote, but I think it touches on lots of things that the community feels. I mean, we are British and, in the wider sense, European for sure. But America has distanced itself from the rest of the world with its actions of late. But Apple was already doing this. All the things he says in the second paragraph there, Apple was doing.
It's true. It is true. I think there's a lot of truth in what he said. He's obviously not planning to go to America anytime soon, by the look of that comment. And he has been an Apple user for a long time. We spoke about him recently because he's gone from the iPad back to the Mac. Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? I think that it's hard to back a company that historically we've gone to because morally they feel like the better company. They've got better principles. But this is it. It's hard to see that at the moment.
When the alternative was Microsoft, and Microsoft were doing the practice they had when we were, having this conversion moment, all the antitrust stuff that was going on when we were in university the first time around. It was a clear choice, wasn't it? You could go for the company that was hoovering up your data, flattening the little guys to let them have any sort of access to the system, and only kept Apple around in order to show that they did have some competition.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's bonkers, isn't it?
And now Apple is that company, and it's quite difficult to live with, really, in some ways. But I'm glad the EU are pushing on this. I'm glad all the countries are in the world, because we know Apple can be better. But capitalists got a capitalist, I suppose.
There is that. I think that is it, isn't it? They've got.
Yeah. Speaking of capitalisting, and whether this will work well, I don't know, as The Verge blocks me on its various things. Apparently, Google is paying Samsung an enormous sum to pre-install Gemini. Does this surprise you?
It doesn't, but isn't this what we're going through with the default search engine on your web browser? We're now going to have default apps installed. So it all just feels, a little frustrating, I think, to say the least, that we're just going round and round in circles here. Yeah,
it's the same thing again. This is Google acting maliciously. Don't install any potential other agents from Perplexity or ChatGPT. Install ours. In Samsung's case with Android, I guess it kind of makes sense, but Android is meant to be the more open ecosystem. I think if you want to let the market be fair, you should let the market competitor do well. And Gemini is fine. I mean, I've used a bit of Gemini. I've used a bit of ChatGPT. I think it's wise to keep abreast of these things. Although, did you see Sam Altman saying you shouldn't say thank you and please to your agents for your AI?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Well, you shouldn't say please and thank you because, of course, saying please and thank you to them makes them spin up and answer the question. That costs more computes, which causes more heats, which,
But I'm a big believer in that you should say please and thank you.
Well, to people, yes. To AIs?
But if you change your behaviours, then surely you're then going to change it's not good for your behaviour longer term, if you know what I mean. Like, if you stop doing it, then does that mean that then in the real world you're also going to stop saying thank you to people?
I would hope not. I hope we can differentiate between people and agents. Just to finish off on this story from The Verge, though, that they're not clear on what the actual sum is. It's just an enormous sum, which, given Google's amount of money, must be pretty enormous.
Yeah, it must be pretty enormous. Like I say, I don't like this pre-install thing. I don't like Apple pre-install some of their stuff. Every time you get, new device, you often end up with Pages being installed or iMovie and stuff. So I don't like it. I think people should go and pick what they want to download. How many devices do you go to and you remove some of these apps off because the person's not using it?
Well, it's been quite revelatory to me installing a couple of Linuxes again the last few days. Is how lean they are when they come out of the box. Arch Linux in particular comes with nothing. It'll come with a built-in web browser, but that's it. You go at the software stores to install anything else that you want. And at the other end of the scale, you've got things like Mint, which I know you tried with your kids, which has more installed. They give you some Office apps and things like that out of the box. But I think that's quite a happy medium. Is give people a lean operating system, give them access to an easily downloadable store where they can add whatever they want, be it the App Store, be it the Linux, Linux stores of whatever sort they are. Maybe not the Windows Store because it's just a disaster. But is it called that as the Microsoft Store? I don't know what.
I can't remember. Yeah, probably Windows Store, I guess, because Microsoft Store would be bricks and mortar, possibly.
Yeah, we don't care about it enough really to do it. All I know is it's very invasive and gets in your start menu a lot.
It does. I actually went through my Windows PC and removed a bunch of apps because they just sat there in the background and then they get updated. And I was like, I don't need these. I literally use that computer for gaming. And I did it on my son's to try and save him some hard drive space because I think it's better to have a leaner machine. You could always have the icons there and download on first use would be better. Or just give me an option. Look, these features are available if you want them for free. Go and pick what you want. I just don't like that it's pre-installed.
Yeah, I agree. It's like covering your laptop in stickers, isn't it? I mean, that was always a difference between a Windows PC and a Mac, was they would be covered in Intel, this manufacturer, that thing, it's got sound by Dolby, whatever.
I hate stickers. They really anger me. And then when they're stuck on with something that's really hard to remove, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. Should we do some news?
Let's do some news.
So first up, you ever bought any TP-Link network equipment?
Yes, but not for a long. I was just thinking back. Yes, but not for a long time. I found this article really interesting. So TP-Link is being probed for criminal antitrust because they're selling routers below cost to grab market share, which is one thing. But I didn't realise that it's a Chinese company that's kind of severed itself, let's go with that for a severance link, and put a head office over in the States to become an American company. They did this back in October, obviously ahead of Donald Trump getting in. So they're obviously trying to play some game here. And then now they've been investigated, for selling their equipment below cost price, like I say, to grab market share. And then I was thinking about that. Surely they're on a hiding to nothing there. They get market share, but unless they're charging subscriptions and stuff, then how are they going to get some of this? How are they going to get some revenue back in the long term?
I guess, there's not a lot of network manufacturers charge subscriptions. I mean, even Unify and Eero and people like that they do have A-level.
It's more like bolt-ons.
Yeah, it's sort of enhanced network protection or ad blocking or, some sort of corporate surveillance of what's going on over your network or switches and things like that. But generally the devices themselves and the software that they run on are free in the sense of you pay for the device and then you're able to use them. I've had a few TP-Link things in the past. In fact, as I'm thinking about it, I think the switch that I passed on to you might have been a TP-Link switch that...
Netgear.
Netgear, is it? Okay. I certainly had a TP-Link switch at one point because they are so much cheaper than what the competition has to offer and have been for a very long time. And you say hiding to nothing. It depends how default you become, doesn't it? I and you have settled on our networking equipment because we like them. It's reliable, it works. I'll always replace it if something breaks with something, from the same manufacturer, unless I've got a really good reason to switch to something else. So if you're a TP-Link shopper, be it home or enterprise, and you buy it and it's reliable and it works, and you look to replace it, well, next time you replace your TP-Link switch, if it's 3 times more expensive than the one that you bought initially, you'll probably do it just because that's what you're familiar with and you've got the software up and your systems are built on that. So maybe that's the angle they're going for, that you sort of put them in really cheap, you get there and then you crank the prices up in sort of the old traditional, almost mafia Ponzi scheme type way. That's what you do and that's business. But that might be my take. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but it's quite a gamble, isn't it? Like, how many people buy new routers? I mean, they're often the thing that just go on and on and on and on for years and years and years. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, but people do. Gamers want the fastest thing with the MIMOs and the Wi-Fi 7 and all the rest of it for routers. But if you go beyond that and you think there's a bit of a revolution going on at the moment, moving up to 2.5 gig networking, and then very quickly afterwards we'll probably get 10 gig networking. And if they're at the front of this and they've got a bunch of gig Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6 networking equipment lying around, and then they've got the upgrades for a little bit less than the competition, you're going to do that. And then when the next round of upgrades comes along, or something fails, or there's a software update that it doesn't support, then they're in a great position to do that. It's playing a very long game.
A very long game.
But I guess if you've got your Netgears and you've got your established Cisco's and people out there, Juniper networks that make sort of enterprise level and Unify, you need to start somewhere. And if you're an upstart company, what else do you do? Price is often a great differentiator.
Yeah, prices or innovative product, I guess. But you're right, prices, a lot of people vote with their feet.
And the other side of this is, of course, that Chinese companies are under a lot of scrutiny, particularly from American and British manufacturers. Was it Huawei got chucked out, more or less, of the United States for making a lot of their network equipment?
And the UK.
And the UK. So putting, a Chinese company nominally under American control gets them past that potential. We're scrutinized even more closely because what are you doing? Are you monitoring our network traffic? That's quite important, kind of thing. So there may be more to that than this. I'm not accusing TP-Link of doing that. I think they're probably just doing business to get their network equipment out there. But it's a consideration for other people.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't rush to go buy a TP-Link device, I think.
The one I had was perfectly reliable until it decided it was going to be a DHCP server one day, which I hadn't switched on, and it just kept killing my network because I had 2 DHCP servers.
Ooh.
It was nasty.
Oof.
And what a strange thing to have to go and diagnose as well, because for those that don't know, DHCP is sort of the network address that your device gets assigned when it registers itself on the network. So it's postcode, effectively. You're only meant to have one server assigning postcodes on your network. I then suddenly had 2, and devices didn't know where they were sending packets. They didn't know what was going on. It was a nightmare.
And if you were a normal home user, you would be scuppered because that's quite challenging.
Yeah, but I figured it out eventually.
Shall we move on to the news I want to talk about?
Well, if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it. Tell us about iPad OS 19. Well, the rumours of iPad OS 19.
I think we touched on it last week. There's talk of iPad OS getting more Mac-like with this latest upgrade, which would be great because iPad OS 18 brought nothing really to the iPad, which was a shame. And what they're talking about here is that when you plug in an external display to your iPad, which I do most days when I'm at work, you're going to get like a Mac menu bar at the top. Now, the iPad already kind of has some of this in that they often have it at the bottom. If you push the command key, you can see all the shortcuts, and it's arranged like menus. So it feels like what they're doing is taking that and just making it more Mac-like is kind of what the rumor is. So it doesn't feel that big a jump, but I think it's great they're giving the iPad some attention in this space because it needs it. I love my iPad for work. It's fantastic. I need to use the Office apps, and to be fair to Microsoft, first class citizen, on the iPad they're doing a great job of the apps. But what it is lacking is some frustration when you're trying to use more than four windows, which is all you can have on one screen, or if you're doing a lot with the keyboard, something's trying to grab keyboard focus. Stage Manager only lets you have windows that in certain places, and that whilst they can overlap, it also really wants to have gaps between them, whereas I don't have gaps between it. It's wasted pixels. So it's going to be super interesting to see what they're going to do here, because I think anything they're going to do to improve Stage Manager is really going to make it a lot better. So I'm glad they're still spending time and effort on it, and they haven't just abandoned it. And it does feel like Stage Manager's on the Mac. It's also what you use on your Vision Pro. So I wonder if this is where they're going to be going in the future for their default multitasking way, for all their OSs, especially as we're talking about the OSs getting the same coat of paint this year. It's going to be, I'm really keen to see where they're going to go with it. So I like the sound of this, that the iPad's potentially going to get more capable, but we need to see what it looks like. But if they're going to put a menu bar on when you attach a keyboard, which I do most of the time, my iPad is my laptop. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. That's it. Yeah, I don't even need to say anymore. I think the sums it up.
On the one hand, I'm keen to see them do something with Stage Manager because I mean, on the Mac, it's a wasted feature to me. I don't understand why anybody would ever switch it on. But on the iPad, it brought you something. You could have more than one. You could have windows overlapping each other at least, which was something.
Yeah,
less control.
and you could have 4 windows on your external monitor. I'm pointing at my external monitor, and you could have 4 windows on your iPad. Obviously, it's quite hard on my 11-inch to have 4 windows to be usable, but it really, for me, it massively increased my productivity on my iPad, which I was already using to do that.
And that's fair. And my limited sort of experience of it was that it kind of tiled them to a certain extent. You could they peek out past the edge of each other, so you could see one was behind the other. But you don't have the level of control with your windows that you do with a
you don't have any fine grain precision.
Yeah.
What I was amazed they didn't do was some auto tiling thing, like you see that on Windows 11 and on the Mac. Why is that on the iPad? Like, I wish they didn't do overlapping windows and they just did proper window tiling, because I think having them overlap just isn't actually that helpful. For me, having them arrange themselves on my 5K screen in a grid that I can just pick. And I think, to be fair to Microsoft, I think they've done a great job of it.
They've done a great job of copying tiling window manager on Linux, that's for sure. I'll move swiftly along from that. But I agree with you. I think that you either give somebody complete control over your windows, where you can drag them around and resize them and arrange them in exactly the way they want to do, see John Syracuse, or you do some sort of tiling window manager where as you spawn a new window or a new tab or something like that, they make room for each other on that screen, and you have that sort of... It decides for you, but at least you've got a control. If you shut this window, then everything else expands to fill the space, kind of thing. Which... the side-by-side thing on iPad is kind of a version of that, where you could drag one to sort of 75%.
But that was like the iPad implementation of it. Kind of like when they did the cursor, they did it in a very iPad way rather than just in a Mac way. And I wish they did more of that with this Stage Manager version.
Which was fine for the limitations of the iPad at the time. But as soon as they gave you Stage Manager and they gave you external control, they should have given you more control over the windows. It's not like iPad developers don't know how to dynamically resize windows based on a screen size that they're given. All Mac apps can be dynamic, and iPad apps and iPhone apps are designed to fit the screen constraints in which they're in. So if you just drag a window, you're just changing the screen constraints. So I don't think that's a problem. I mean, before we get off this, I just want to sort of expand out a little bit on the fact that this may be coming to the iPhone in a particular way as well, with iOS 19 potentially getting some Stage Manager feature for USB-C iPhones. So the fact that this may not just be confined to the iPad, you may be able to do this on your phone as well. How that looks, I'm not sure, because if you plug your screen in with USB-C, do you need a mouse then? Is that a wireless mouse? Does the mouse plug into the screen? There's a lot of considerations you need to think about there too.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you plug your phone in now, it just mirrors it, which is kind of okay, but everything's obviously big and chunky. I think if they do this is kind of where Android went with Dex. I think you could plug your phone in and use it as a desktop. For me, this would be great. Could I go to work and just use my phone to do email and office apps, and have, like I do now, I have a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse on my desk in the office. I take my iPad in and I dock it in essence. But I could just do this with my phone. That would be amazing for me, especially if you're in a pinch, and you're just traveling maybe to London. You don't really need your iPad all day, but you just need to be able to dock your phone when you get there. I think this is quite interesting. I'd love to see where they go with it. Maybe they could make the phone screen into your trackpad, and you just need a keyboard. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the detail of where they go with this, but I think this would be great to bring this, especially to all USB-C phones. Have been out for a few years. I like it when Apple bring new tech and it gets retro applied to devices that are already out there.
And I'm with you. I think it's fine. I'd also want to sort of see the implementation of that. That cheap Chinese screen I bought the other day could be amazing. You've suddenly got a 14-inch screen you can plug in your phone and it becomes a computer. Wow. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it?
That would be cool.
So the problem with this is it's all window dressing. If you know what I mean. Okay, you can move some windows around. You may be able to have a couple of things side by side on your phone for the rest of it. The fundamental problem of iOS and iPadOS is things don't live in the background. I can't run an audio app in one side and then bring up something else on the right-hand side of it, and they both capture audio from the same thing. I can't leave a terminal running in one corner of my iPad or on my phone doing something, FTPing some stuff around or running an update on a Linux server in the background, and then if something else on iOS or iPadOS will randomly decide to kill it. So you're not getting true multitasking in the operating system because they're so optimized for battery life that that's their model. they kill off or pause or freeze apps in the background and don't run as a true multitasking operating system, unless you're Apple and you're a blessed first-party citizen. So unless there's a fundamental change.
But even Apple apps, Final Cut Pro, get backgrounded. I agree with you here, and this is why I had to go get a Mac when we started podcasting, because we couldn't really do it on my iPad as we wanted to grab the audio, which is frustrating, and it's amazing they haven't dealt with that. Do you want to bring up the next link for STS? Because this probably summarises it quite well. In Steve Troughton-Smith, who we've linked to in the past, he's basically bullet pointed the things he would need to see on an iPad for him to go back to it.
And he's having a bit of a revolution in his life, as we've talked about before. He's become so disillusioned with all the stuff that Apple have done up till now with the EU and their sort of treatment of developers and the launch of the Vision Pro and everything. So he's coming at it from a slightly better angle. But that's not to say he's not a superb Mac developer and an iPad developer who produces lots of apps in the App Store and is a very thoughtful voice. I mean, we started following Steve Troughton-Smith because he was the man who could go into the various Apple packages and see what was coming next. He pulled out hardware strings, he did all sorts of stuff. Phenomenal Mac developer. And I'll read these through. So for him to start caring about the iPad like he used to, these are the 10 poles I need to see. An overhaul of the app lifecycle model, basically just what we were talking about there, with background apps and long-running processes. Better freeform windowing with unlimited windows and window management, expose, mission control, etc. I think that's fine. And again, what we just talked about. APIs for devs to resize position windows, a persistent menu bar in windowing mode. Well, we got that one. Multiple audio streams and multiple audio streams and routing extensions, so you would be able to record your podcast and look at a web browser at the same time. Virtualization support, oh my yes, and a sandbox terminal. That's, for me, a lot of the stuff I do on my computers is inside a terminal. I know that's a bit weird, but I do. It's a bit old school in 70s, but I'm forever in my terminal. I've recommended terminal apps on a number of occasions here. So I think this is a really solid place to start. So not just the window dressing Apple, but the actual functionality as well is what we need. Yeah,
and I think one more point there could be some form of Xcode, i.e. they gave us playgrounds, but they're not very good at keeping up to date when new OSs come out. Like, how can we do proper iOS development on our iPads? It's got the power to do it. Their actual implementation's pretty good, but they just don't maintain it with all the latest changes coming out with all the versions, and it makes it a bit frustrating. I think if they could do Xcode, rebooted, whatever that's going to be, because it's not Playgrounds. Playgrounds was a good start. That would be the last point. But I agree with his points there. And some of these are quite easy. Surely, given us Terminal, shouldn't be that scary, and it should be an optional download for techs. Like, just make it available, get on with that.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, that extra setting in settings. Yeah, this might break my iPad or my phone, I'm really fine with it. Yes, I'll take it 6 times, I'm happy with it, let me install what I want.
Yep, let's go with it. So it'll be interesting to see what Apple do this year, but it does feel I'm feeling a lot more interested in WWDC than what I was. We're going to get a new coat of paint potentially. My iPad's going to get some love, which it hasn't done for the last couple of years, not really. So super interested just to see where they go with it. So I'm actually a bit more interested in WWDC than I was probably a month ago.
Or we're going to get, here's Apple Intelligence 2. It actually works this time.
I wonder if they're even going to mention Apple Intelligence.
How can they not?
Maybe they will and go, look, all the stuff we talked about last year, it's still coming. But I want to see the stuff I'm going to get, and I know I'm going to end up installing some betas on some devices.
Moving on, something I'm not going to install would be a web browser built by Perplexity AI. So this is the CEO of Perplexity coming out and saying if they make a browser, its browser will track everything users do online to sell them hyper-personalized ads. How attractive does that sound?
No, I just, it's just a big no, isn't it? I don't want this. Why does anybody want this? Why is it ads as the thing that drive the world? I don't get it. We pay to avoid ads. We install software to avoid ads, and yet everybody seems hell bent on giving us more personalised ads, which I just don't want. I don't think I ever really click on any ads. I don't know. If I want something, I just go to the shop and buy it. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, but the problem is, as was pointed out in the article, Google has become a huge behemoth by being an advertising company. So everybody's like, well, that's where the money is.
And they've sustained it over multiple decades.
Yeah, exactly. There's some interesting details in this, as well as building a browser, that they've actually got a partnership with Motorola to install Perplexity AI on the Motorola Razr, which just came out this week, which, by the way, is quite a sexy looking phone, I got to say. It's a proper flip screen folding phone. But I don't want. I want to choose what I've got on my phone. I don't want anything pre-baked into it. I mean, let's face it, I've pretty much turned off the Apple Intelligence features on my current phone. And you can do the same with that Gemini. So hopefully you can do that with Perplexity if you buy a Razr. But these deals are beginning to be made, aren't they? And the next story we're going to talk about is really where a lot of this stuff is coming from, this sudden interest in web browsers. But I just think it's interesting, these AI companies. How many of them will still be around in 5 years' time?
Yeah, how many's going to be around? And if this is their business model, I don't like it.
It's okay though, because they're talking to Samsung, so maybe you won't get Gemini, maybe you'll get Perplexity AI instead. So then, that hyper-focused, hyper-personalized advertising they're going to give you is going to be everywhere.
I don't want it. You
ain't got a choice.
Oh no, this is it.
Well, you do have a choice. You can go and buy a Fair phone and install de-googled Android and, live your life.
Yeah, I don't know, it does feel bonkers, doesn't it? Because I don't know if you want to move on to our next link, but the next link is companies like Perplexity and OpenAI want to buy Chrome. So either they're going to build their own one, or they could end up buying Chrome, which has got a huge existing user base. And then obviously they could then pivot into this hyper, targeted ads platform. And I don't know. And is it better the devil you know with Chrome? Should it stay where it is? Because are you just going out the frying pan into the fire if you then sell it to an AI company that's just going to, drain all your personal data from you? I don't know.
Didn't you just describe Google there?
Yeah, fair. I mean, I don't use any of these products, so. But are they going to make Google look like a good custodian?
I think the biggest problem with all this is who cares? You and I care because we're into this stuff and we read about it and we know what data computers have on us and we look at leaks and vectors of attack and all that kind of stuff. Your wife, were you not in the picture, would walk down the shop and buy the next iPhone that came along. My kids would do the same thing. The average person in the street just wants to be able to scroll their TikTok, answer the odd email, look at their Snapchat, stream their whatever on YouTube and go to bed. And they don't care that they're being profiled, monitored. They're, all the every single click, every interaction, every doom scroll, every dark pattern is being watched in the browser that they use and on the phone that they have and using the AI agent that they've picked. Do you think they care?
No, not one iota.
And that's the more worrying thing is we talk about the tech impact of this, but the societal impact of just, sod it, we'll just give all of our stuff to Google or Perplexity or OpenAI or Apple or whoever it is. We seem quite happy to do that as a culture, as a country, as a, I don't know what we are, as a, as a society. This is the choices that we're making and running to make them. People are running to install these agents on their phone. The sort of use of these agents around my workplace, I'm sure your workplace and others, let's face it, you can't get away from it with Copilot in your workplace.
Well, we don't have it on licensing yet, but yeah, this is it. You're giving up your data, aren't you? That is the thing, and people are fine with it. They just don't see a value on their data and them.
I mean, let's face it, and we will come back to this story. If you go to office.com to log in, you're offered to log into the Microsoft 365 Copilot app. What does that even mean?
It's their new... This is what used to be the Office app on mobile, and they've just rebadged it as 365 Copilot, which is where you can open spreadsheets and everything, but you can also engage with Copilot on it.
No, this is office.com.
Yeah.
So if I log into my web browser version of it, everything now is branded Copilot.
Yeah.
Everything is branded Copilot. So it's deeper than just mobile. It's everything.
Okay. Yeah, it is everything. They are pushing Copilot onto absolutely everything. I agree.
Everything. So if I go to download my corporate version of Word or Excel or PowerPoint or whatever, it's branded Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Yep.
And that sort of pernicious... Well, I'm surprised Microsoft isn't on the list of companies looking to buy Chrome, by the way. Yeah,
it's true, because Edge just hasn't... I like Edge, or I did, but it just hasn't got the name, even though it largely has the same engine underneath. It's amazing that Microsoft aren't queuing up for it as well.
So this is an interesting story, and the be-all and the end-all of it is that if Department of Justice break up Google and they have to divest themselves of Chrome, they're probably more worried about divesting themselves of Android than Chrome. but Chrome is a massive market share leader for them. Everybody knows Google Chrome. It's the first thing most people want to install on any computer or tablet or browser or whatever as a browser. So, it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit sad, though. As I say, you think of the societal impact of this. It's not small.
No, agreed.
Moving on, and just sticking in the realm of what leaks about you on the internet, I just thought this was a fascinating story about these sort of corporate spyware apps where employers of some companies install agents on their employees' devices to watch what they're doing. So a lot of them do what we've been talking about with Microsoft Recall, which is snap screenshots every so often to make sure you're not goofing off and scrolling your Facebook feed. You are actually sitting with your spreadsheet open and doing your work.
I hate the thought of these apps. Like, surely you trust your employees to work, otherwise why are you employing them? And surely you should be monitoring them on their output, not upon whether they had 5 minutes off. Because who doesn't take 5 minutes out to go read the news, go and look at something that you're talking about in the office or over Slack or Teams. I hate the idea of these apps. I don't know. I don't like the big brother attitude. So this story that you've got is, like a Microsoft Recall. It's taking screen grabs of employees. Who's looking at all this data? And then I'd like to think people are only looking at this data when they've got a disciplinary case. I'm going to caveat it and assume people are doing the right thing. We think this employee isn't doing any work, and therefore we want to look at disciplining them or helping them to right their wrongs. But what we're talking about here, though, is one of these spyware tools has potentially leaked, or it has leaked 21 million screenshots in real time onto the internet. Like, whoa. And if this is just screen grabbing everything on your screen, this could be you logging into your bank, this could be your social media, this could be you looking at inappropriate stuff, this could be absolutely anything.
I think it's worse than that, though, isn't it? So this is an app called Work Composer, which some employers have installed on their employees' machines, and as you say, it sits there grabbing screenshots. It has leaked 21 million images. And fine, all right, it might be. Your employer doesn't care if you've leaked your social media details online. They care that you're not working, I guess. Although, again, you and I are in the same boat about this. I think I don't care if somebody spends 5 minutes looking at Facebook as long as they then get on and do their job and they produce the thing that they've got to do. This is more, what corporate stuff have they leaked as a consequence of this? Because presumably they're looking at their emails, they're looking at the spreadsheets, they're looking at the API keys, they've got the passwords for the server in there, they've got X, Y, and Z in there.
Budgets, salaries.
Yeah, what the CEO was doing at the weekend on his PA's diary, whatever it is,
Oh, it's just insane, isn't it? Like, think of all the things you and I look at on our computers. Oh, it's insane how bad this could be.
We've just got through a whole thing talking about personally, Recall personally. It's sharing your shopping habits and, hyper advertising and all the rest of it. This is an absolute treasure trove of corporate secrets.
Yeah, potentially.
And you think about Recall, and it's exactly the same, except Recall has done it even better for you because it's got it in a nicely OCR database where you can go and look for specific strings.
Yeah, true. It's helping you as an attacker. I did see this link, and then here in the UK, Marks and Spencer's big department store chain, they've got a massive outage this week where they're not taking any orders online. They've had a big cyber attack. Maybe they were using this software. It's been leaked, and then it's given attackers a way in because they've found a password, like you say, an API key, whatever it may be, and it's allowed them a backdoor in. I mean, the amount of data that people in an organisation are browsing, because you've got everybody from HR to commercial departments buying to software developers coding, third-party support. It could be absolutely anything.
It's horrific, and I genuinely think employers that do this kind of stuff, their employees are scum. I genuinely do.
I don't like it at all. It does not sit well.
You should trust your employees to get on and do their jobs. If they're not doing their jobs, there's better ways to handle it than just sitting there, as a manager, clicking through 100,000 images every couple of days to see if they've spent 5 minutes on Minesweeper.
Oh, what? Who's looking at this data? I'm sorry. I think that's awful.
Yeah, grow up, frankly. Grow up, big corporations doing this. And in some ways, I want you to get hacked for doing this kind of stuff because it's sleazy and it's nasty. And, I shouldn't say stuff like that, but genuinely, I just don't like it at all.
I completely agree.
And just as a thought, this Work Composer thing may now be staring down the barrel of the European GDPR and the various American consumer protection laws as well, because it's scummy.
Yep.
Should we talk about something nicer?
Something way nicer. I think I put this one in here.
So this was a rumor of how thin the iPhone 17 Air might be. And if this is true, it's got some thicknesses of phones, and the iPhone Air is the one second from the top, I think, in the top screenshot.
Yes.
Sorry, radio listeners, podcast listeners, and similar in the... So you've got an edge view and a length view, and the long and the short of it is it's barely wider than the volume buttons and the camera control buttons. That's how much thinner the iPhone Air is going to be.
It looks, so I put this in here because I'm quite excited about the Air. I've used my phone way less than I did. I love my phone. I love the cameras on it. But I'd like it to be a bit lighter in my pocket. I'm super interested in this. I don't use a case. I think it looks cool. I think it looks really thin. It looks like having Rod's holding his phone up because he doesn't use a case. I think it's looking a lot like where we were with the iPhone 7, which was peak sort of thinness and functionality. That iPhone 7 was a killer phone. I mean, how many people had an iPhone 7? It was such a popular device, and I think it was peak that design of phone with the home button. Obviously the 8 came later and we've had SEs, but it looks so thin. It looks cool. I think the devil in the detail is, though, what am I not going to have? That's the devil, isn't it? Like, how much battery life am I going to give up? How many cameras am I going to give up? Are there going to be other features? Are they going to have the always-on display or the ProMotion screen? You just don't know what Apple's had to sacrifice to make this thinness work. So I'm really looking forward to the phones this year because I'm going to have a phone this year. I've decided my son's eyeing mine up more and more every day. And actually, I fancy a phone. I haven't had one for 2 years. So I'm really excited about the Air. I just hope it's got the right level of compromise for me, which is basically I just want roughly what I've got today, please. I know I won't have my 3 cameras, but actually I really only use the 1X lens with a reasonable battery life in it. That's what I'm really looking for, and hopefully the same sort of screen. So, yeah, super curious to see what we're going to end up with.
Yeah, so it's going to be very thin, 8.75 millimeters thick, apparently. And in the screenshots, and have a look in the article just to see how thin it is. Again, these are rumours. We don't know that this is the actual thing. I guess I'm slightly disappointed in a way. I like how thin it is. That's fine. You're going to have to lose your SIM card socket, it would seem, for sure.
I've already done that in our house. Like, everybody in my house has gone eSIM.
Yeah, all right, so there's 4 people in this house, and 1 out of 4 has managed it in this house. So
it's not a fun process. I will agree with you there, but it's got to get better. I suspect
amongst the UK population, it's probably less than 5%.
Yeah, it is minuscule.
So that's an issue, I think, for UK buyers.
Agreed.
Buying from an American company may be an issue for UK and EU buyers. Let's just put that out there. The biggest disappointment for me in this is it doesn't look like the industrial design has changed at all.
Yeah, that is it looks just like a skinny sibling rather than looking like a skinny cousin, in that you probably want to see something a little different. Like, we've had this design for a while, but where else are they going to go with a slab of glass, I guess? I don't know.
Well, they could go back to squared. I like the completely squared off one. They do that every so often as well. And these are the iPhone 17 models, right? So they're all exactly the same. I was, as you were talking there, I was looking at my iPhone 16. 15? 15. And they're exactly the same as an iPhone 15 Pro. The same round, the same positions for the aerial thing, other than the camera control button.
Yeah, which you and I don't have.
No, and I'm quite happy not to have it.
The only reason I want the camera control button is so I can launch the camera and I can make my action button the flashlight. That's all I want to do.
That's first world problems.
Agreed.
But other than making it thinner, this is the same phone. It's got the same bend. It's got the same camera bump. Well, it's hard to see. You can't see the full camera bump for these things. Although we know it's going to go back right along the back of the phone, which we've talked about for stability purposes. But everything else about this is the same. And that's really boring. I mean, people want to know you've got the newest thing. And other than the camera bump on the back, unless it's square this time, or that it's got screens that leak past the edges as they did for a little while on Android phones, it's just, it's an iPhone. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree with that statement. It is a little unexciting. I'm just excited about the potential thinness. I think that's all I'm hanging on to.
Thin's good, but let's wait for Bendgate and see how that goes.
Hopefully they did all right at Bendgate. Though it became a nothing, didn't it?
Which pocket do you carry your phone in?
Left pocket, never put anything in it.
Front left, rear left?
Front left.
Front left. See, I think you're an animal. Back left is the right place to put a phone.
My phone's been in my front left pocket for about 20 years at this point, I think. But
you don't have the big phone though, do you?
Nope, never had.
There's your problem. As soon as you got a big phone, it's too big for your front pocket. Sitting down
okay.
becomes very uncomfortable.
Right, okay. Well, I'm not going to get the big phone, so I'm all right with that. But I was talking to a friend of mine who just recently bought this 16 Pro Max, and he was putting it in the same pocket as like his keys or coins. I was like, what are you doing? The phone, put it in a pocket on its own. That's it. I don't care which pocket, but always have one pocket that's got nothing else in it but your phone. Then you won't scratch it or damage it. Oh, it's hard, isn't it?
It is hard. Should we do a car corner?
Car corner. Boom, boom.
Yeah. Broom, broom. So this is an interesting little thing. An American company called Slate has released teaser shots of an electric truck for $20,000. It's funny, I was talking about this yesterday with some of my family about the expense of electric vehicles. It's because I was behind a Dacia Spring. I don't know if you've seen a Dacia Spring in real life.
I don't know what that is.
So Dacia Spring is Dacia, who are a spin-off of Renault. I think they were a Czech company or a Romanian company or something like that, Dacia, who've done really well in the UK. They make very cheap little sort of SUV things. And have made a cheap EV. And I think it's less than £25,000, the Dacia Spring. I'll let you pull up the link for that while I'm talking. What you don't see is a lot of cheap electric vehicles. Small range electric vehicles are still in the £30,000 mark in this country. Like if you go and spec up a half decent electric mini, you're probably talking £35,000 to £40,000 even for the sort of bottom of the range one. So this American company called Slate releasing a truck. Trucks are important in America for $20,000 with no frills, basically, not even electric windows. Is quite an interesting thing, I think. I mean, it's not going to have the biggest range in the world. It's only going to be like 150 miles, but it looks okay. It looks like a Land Rover missing its top or a Rivian missing the back to me. But it's very no frills. It's got the basics in there. It doesn't even come with a radio. You just hang your. It's got a speedometer and that's about it. The absolute basics of what you need a vehicle to be. But I think for $20,000, that's perfectly reasonable. And I quite like the sort of more basic approach to car making to get more EVs in people's hands.
I think it looks quite cool. I think it looks good. I think cars have got so expensive. I think it looks fantastic. I quite like this. I like the design aesthetic they've gone for. I think they've done a really nice job with it. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it has to look bad. I'd like to let's see what this looks like. And I think 150 miles, that's not bad. It depends what you're doing in life. If you're just doing, if you're a local handyman, for example, this would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would have thought so. If you don't have too far to go, you're just doing jobs around town, you need to lug some stuff here and there, I think it's perfect. It's a, if you're into trucks, it's a handsome enough vehicle, I think.
I like I said, I really like it. I think it looks cool. I've also put in a link for the Dacia Spring. I won't ever buy a Dacia again. I had one briefly as a rental for work for about 3 months. It was not a pleasant experience. But this was about 10 years ago. Maybe they've come a long way since then.
Well, I think all cars have got better. It's a rising tide, isn't it? Just to say that the basic Spring with the smallest battery, 33 kilowatts, isn't going to get you very far. Is £14,995,
which good.
Is not a lot. Well, I mean, it's not nothing, but compared to most electric vehicles, that's not a lot of money to get into a car and be able to drive around with. I mean, you'd probably want the one with a bigger battery. It's not much bigger at 48 kilowatts. So you're talking $15,995. But actually, for basic motoring to get you around in a little city car, what's wrong with that?
No, that is good. And the numbers you're showing also have a monthly fee of like £160 a month, which is affordable to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not the prettiest car in the world, but it's just a small city car,
It looks good. Look, I'm a big fan of it. I think there should be more electric cars. I think when I was commuting, it's fantastic. You just come home, you charge it up, you don't even have to think about it. It's really good.
There we go. Car corner. Should we do some media?
Let's do media.
So first up, did you watch Race Across the World that was out on last?
This was an instant watch. It was great. The kids were on half term, so they could stay up late and watch it too. I love Race Across the World. It's my favourite show. I just love the concept of it. It's fantastic. I assume you watched it?
Of course I did. I think it's a great show. I think it's the perfect format for a bit of reality TV, a bit of drama, a bit of travel. It's got everything in there. It's funny, we're going to talk about Bond later. Bond definitely comes across as a travelling thing. There's something about travel that really appeals to lots of humans, I think, and sort of the interpersonal dramas and the relationships and everything that's in there. The BBC have nailed this format, I think.
Yeah, so Race Across the World, for anybody that hasn't seen it, is usually have, I think, 5 teams of 2 people, and sometimes it's, husband and wife, or siblings, or brother, or mates, or whatever it may be. And they get put in a location, they hand over their phone and money and cards, they get given some cash, and then they've got to go from ultimately the start to the end, but they have to stop off at various checkpoints along the route. They have jobs they can go and do to earn some money, and they've got to basically work out, do they want to rush, or do they want to take in some of the scenery, or when are they going to stop and work? And it's just a great mechanic, isn't it? Because you get to the end of each leg and it's like, who got in first, so they get to leave that checkpoint earlier, and who's got the most money still remaining to get to the end of the trip. It's just really well done, really well filmed. It's fantastic.
Yep, it's a good show. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one. And of course, PSA Taskmaster is back on Thursday.
Yeah, I nearly put some of these links in. Taskmaster's on Thursday. We've got Clarkson's Farm at the end of the month. It's all coming together this month.
It is. Grand Designs.
Just very briefly, I watched the latest season of Grand Design. So this is where people go and spend a lot of money usually and build their ultimate house and all of that. And I just love this show. And I think we've had about 6 this year, and I just thought I'd include it because it's about 45 minutes to an hour long, depending on whether you have the adverts. But there's just some great houses in there, and it's just I really enjoy this show. I hate it when they have ones that fail and the family have put themselves in enormous debt, but I love it when it all works out. And I just think it's a cool show, and it's nice to see some cool houses being built.
I used to be a huge fan of Grand Designs. I'd make a big effort to go and see it when it was on. I'm less keen on these revisited. I'm quite happy to have seen them, done them. The revisit just sort of, you get 2/3 of it are what you've already seen, and then they just say what's happened in the last year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it was.
Yeah, there's only 2 revisited on this one, but it does feel a bit of a cop-out, the revisit ones.
Yeah, it does. It's a good show, though. I've done it. I'm done with it. I've watched it. I like Kevin MacLeod. I think he's very approachable and he's a good presenter. But, been there, done it, moved on.
No, fair enough. I still like it, so it was nice. It was just a nice bit of easy TV. I watched one on the aeroplane flying home because I downloaded it.
Fair enough. Star Wars.
I just quickly included this. Star Wars Episode 3 is back in the cinemas. It's 20 years old. Who knew? And it's Revenge of the Sith, which is possibly the better of the prequels, possibly, as you've got the whole turn going on. Anyway, I just want to include it. I can't believe it's 20 years old. I don't think my children are interested in going to see it at the cinema, though.
No, I've noticed they've done a lot of this. The Pride and Prejudice film was out in its 25 years birthday as well. There's, fair play to View and other cinemas for doing this kind of thing. In a time of diminishing cinema returns, I think showing some, I'm going to put very heavy scare quotes around classics, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea, is it? I wonder whether it's worth it. I wouldn't mind to have gone to see Shaun of the Dead.
Hot Fuzz is a better film, but yeah, I agree.
I love both of them. Hot Fuzz I watched a lot, though.
Yeah.
James Bond corner?
James Bond corner. Well, I'm continuing on my rewatch. What the hell is this? I'm just looking at this bottom left next to the tomatometer. What's that meant to be? Is that meant to be Roger Moore?
It's the album art. It just looks very softened, doesn't it? It's awful.
That's not Roger Moore. That looks like Justin Bieber or something.
It's awful.
Anyway, sorry, podcast listeners. So Live and Let Die is the 6th James Bond film, possibly the 7th. I'm beginning to lose track. First one with Roger Moore. He was older than Sean Connery coming along to do this. Not rating terribly well with either the critics or the watching audience, Live and Let Die. People know Live and Let Die for this theme song, I would suggest, than the actual film. Originally written by Wings, or performed by Wings, but Paul and Linda McCartney, covered by Guns N' Roses and others. Killer soundtrack. Not a terrible movie. Some odd choices, I would have said, for the relaunch of a new Bond, though. They sort of very heavily leaned into blaxploitation. I think must have been quite popular at that point in time. The travel element's still there. He jets off to New York straight away. Roger Moore, I got to say, does come over even creepier than Sean Connery, if that's possible. Every woman he meets, he's immediately got his hands on and he's trying to sleep with. It's really quite stark when you watch it again. I didn't notice it when I was a kid, how bad it was. I certainly missed a lot of the innuendos and things like that, but how quickly he's just, trying to get into bed with people is really quite, staggering. And it's not a terrible film. I think it's a fairly average one with some nice sort of standout moments. This sort of main tent pole of it is the speedboat chase across Louisiana at some point, where they go over bits of sandbars and they break up people's weddings and end up in swimming pools. And that's quite good. To a modern eye, it's a bit long, I got to say. It sort of goes on and on and on to a certain degree. And then the comedic choice of this, sheriff who sort of runs around talking in a Southern American accent, and I'm pretty sure he pops up in the next film as well, actually. He's sort of a recurring character for a little bit.
He's in The Man with the Golden Gun briefly.
He's in The Man with the Golden Gun. It's odd. I mean, I suppose maybe it was funnier back then, but it's a bit of a damp squib. I think 67% is a bit high for this. Roger Moore's fine as Bond. Actually, watching him again, he carries it off, but it's a very average film.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and watch this. I remember the boat scene. I was just trying to recall some of the story. It's been a long, long time since I watched it, but yeah, I'm not surprised of your feedback. And some of these things do not age well, do they? The world was a different place.
They really don't. I would say Yaphet Kotto, who later pops up in Alien, is very good. Sort of chews the scenery around him very, very well. And Jane Seymour as sort of the main love interest, although there are multiple ones, does a respectable turn. Would later go on to play Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman and other things. So Clifton James, that's the name of the sheriff, Sheriff J.W. Pepper. Yep. So yeah, I mean it's all right. It's not the best Bond film. It's not the worst Bond film. It's kind of thereabouts. So I'm enjoying watching them in sequence like this, though. I really am. I think it's the right way to do it.
Yeah, you're spurring me on to do that at some point, maybe later in the year.
Good stuff. Games.
We ain't got a lot for games.
No, we haven't got a lot for games. Just very, very quickly. RoboCop Rogue City appeared on my list of potential PlayStation games that I could download this month. Not terribly notable in some ways. I've quite enjoyed playing it. It's very much based on the original RoboCop film, the Paul Verhoeven one. They've got the actors that played Murphy and Lewis back to do the voice cast and all the rest of it. I really enjoyed that. You play RoboCop. You don't feel like you're in a lot of danger playing as RoboCop, I got to say. He's fairly invincible. It's quite a nice touch that you can't make him run. He sort of stomps along in that very RoboCop way. Not bad. I spent, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes playing it the other night. Quite enjoyed my time. The graphics are very like RoboCop C, so like the targeting onto the bad guys and all the rest of it. Fun. I mean, it's if you can pick it up for free on the PlayStation as I did, knock yourself out.
It looks kind of cool, actually. Very much of the, like you say, the 80s film. I think it was maybe 90s, 80s. Very much of that era, though. It looks quite cool.
Great film, RoboCop. Well worth a rewatch.
I'll get on that.
Switch 2.
It's just briefly in Switch 2 corner. In America, you can now order these things at like Walmart and Target, etc., which I was hoping we would get over here so I could get a pre-order in, but it's not available here in the UK. But just one thing to know, it looks like there's going to be upgrades. So if you've bought Breath of the Wild on the Switch, there will be a $10 to $20 upgrade if you want the Switch 2 version where it's got enhanced graphics and stuff, which I didn't realise that was going to be a thing, that you've got an upgrade from 1 to 2. I can kind of see it if you're going to get much better visuals and what have you, but I'm interested in Nintendo's doing that. I just wanted to pop that in as a tidbit.
I did log into my Nintendo Online account to see if I could do anything there, and I couldn't.
No, me neither. I think because I had probably qualified for everything apart from letting Nintendo see my usage and being able to email me, which I subsequently turned on, but I hadn't turned it on obviously before they announced it, because I turn all that stuff off. Why wouldn't I?
Well, you're going to get hyper advertised too now by Nintendo.
I like to think Nintendo's a good company. I've got faith in them.
We used to think about that about Apple.
This is true.
Main show, let's
do it.
Very briefly. We've had a birthday, haven't we?
Yeah, I didn't realise this. So the Apple Watch has turned 10 years old. So from the very first Apple Watch announcement, we are now 10 years into it. So it was announced in September 24, and then it shipped. 2014, sorry. And then it shipped in April 2015. And I remember the announcement, and I've put a link in the show notes to the original announcement. They did the iPhone 6, and then they went, at the end, one more thing, here's the Apple Watch, which obviously was Series 0 in the end, and they announced the Apple Watch, this whole new system, and it's quite interesting to go back and watch it. A, Tim looks a lot younger, as you've just seen, but B, the Apple Watch, at first glance, hasn't changed a huge amount. They got a lot right 10 years ago, i.e. the hardware, and that's what really struck me. You go back and watch the original video, the hardware looks very similar to the hardware today, which was quite cool. That they got it so right, like the bands all clip in, and that it's just really good just to go and see some of it. And actually, some of the screens look very similar as well till today. Yeah,
I remember this being announced. I was in Boston. Okay. I was sat next to Faneuil, I can't say it right, at Faneuil Hall in Boston on public Wi-Fi, watching it in America as the iPhone and the Apple Watch.
We were probably texting at the time, I guess.
I vividly remember sitting there, and I got to the end and I thought, it didn't really tell a consistent story, the Apple Watch. I was going to buy one, of course I was, because I was a massive Apple fanboy. Not the edition, which we'll talk about, but I didn't really get it. I don't think Apple had a clear story about what the Apple Watch was going to be at that point. They just thought it was a cool thing to put on your wrist as much as anything.
Yeah, I think it was cool to have on your wrist, and they had. I think they thought apps were going to be way more of a thing than what they've turned out to be. But obviously, as we now know, holding your arm up like this is uncomfortable for a period of time. So they were more pushed into the apps. They obviously had fitness, and they mentioned a lot of fitness at the end. And obviously where the Apple Watch has ended up is it's become notifications and fitness, which is two great uses of that form factor. I wasn't that fussed about getting one. I didn't get one originally. I got one, the Series 0, further down the line. What does strike me though, and you've paused in actually the perfect place, how big the borders are on the screen. And they did a great job of blending the screen with the borders. So it wasn't necessarily obvious if you had a black watch face on how chunky the borders are. And I think they did a really good job of that. And they've iterated on it over the years. But kind of like with the iPhone, it's very slow. They got it a lot right first version and then very slow iteration. The biggest change has come with the software, haven't they? In that the software has changed quite a lot with how you interact, what the buttons do. Whereas the actual hardware form, you look at that one there, and if you hold up a Series 10 today, it's obviously got a lot thinner, and the screen takes up a lot more space, but the concept hasn't really changed that much.
No, my Apple Watch Ultra looks very similar form factor to this, I got to say. It's chunky. It's a chunky boy. I seem to remember them pitching this about communication as much as anything else. There was like that app there, there was an intercom app, and you could text your friends really easily in it and all that kind of stuff. And you're right. I think what they have settled on is fitness. Fitness is the place that it's going to be, the heart rate monitoring and all that kind of stuff. And people just buy them, it seems to me, these days. I'd forgotten Tim Apple was the person who introduced this. I thought it was Steve had introduced.
No, it was Apple and Tim Apple, as we call him. And then Johnny Ive did the voiceover in his silky tones. And I do quite like his voiceovers. It's a bit retro now for Apple. I just think it was amazing. What did strike me, though, is how many different variants they released on day one. Like, there were 3 models. So you had the Apple Watch, which was like the stainless steel version, and then you had the Sport, which was the aluminium one, which has kind of become the de facto one now, and then you had the Edition, which was the one made out of very premium materials and cost a small fortune, which was just insane. And I think maybe that's what they got wrong with it, is actually people wanted the more comfortable pricing for the Sport watch than what they wanted to spend 10 grand on a computer that would age out every 12 months.
Yeah, I didn't understand the gold one, and there's a link to that as well with Beyonce wearing one.
I think the gold one could have worked if they'd had a way that you could swap the gubbins out and keep it current year on year, because the design hasn't changed that much. The sensors have obviously got better over time, but the computer had just aged out instantly because it was slow at the time. And so it's mental, isn't it? You spend 17 grand on this gold watch, and then a year later it's replaced with something far better and faster. So I think they got a lot right. The Edition, they obviously got wrong in that people just don't want to spend that much money on something that is good for 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, $10,000 on a watch that's obsolete in 2 years it was crazy. But at the same time, they were pitching it more for a fashion audience, I think, than a technical audience. People like Karl Lagerfeld and Beyonce and others would wear that as a status symbol. Watches are a bit like that. But this is not a classic Tag or a classic Rolex or something like that.
It's not timeless.
It's not timeless, absolutely. And you think, having spent $10,000 in your battery to be completely useless and running a slow thing in 3 years' time, that's not a timepiece you're going to appreciate, in the fullness of time. Boom, boom. So yeah, I get the fashion thing, but you're right. If there'd been a way to eject the core and slam in a Series 2, 3, 4, 5, awesome. Or an upgrade program where they could melt the gold down for another 5,000 and reincarnate your watch for you. That might have been an option as well, but it's just a bit crazy.
No, agreed. And the other thing, it's possibly more relevant now they could do an Edition, because actually don't need to replace the hardware as much now. Now it's a mature product. You could buy one today, keep it for 3 years, and then, like you say, if they had some form of upgrade program. So I think they got the addition wrong, but they got so much else right. And fair play, the hardware design, and it's one of Johnny R's last sort of major hardware initiatives that was under, obviously he didn't do it all, but under his watch, still stands today. And obviously I don't wear an Apple Watch anymore. I've gone back to analog, and I may enjoy my analog world, I must confess, but I think it's a good device, and a lot of people I know have these on their wrist, and I'm doing a lot more running now, and I did debate getting one again, but I thought I don't want to fall back into that ecosystem, so I've gone Garmin, which has been fine for me, but I can see why people have them. I think they're really well done, very well integrated.
Yeah, there would have been a time that I'd have insta-buyed another Apple Watch, but I've been questioning it a lot recently. That it's my car key, which is handy.
Oh, I forgot I used to use it for my car key.
Yeah, it's handy but not essential. My watch will run it as a car. My phone will run it as a car key as well. Or I could just take the key card and use that. So it's not the end of the world. And it's quite nice to know how many steps I've done or how active I've been. But let's face it, I know that anyway. If I've been for an extended walk with a dog, I know I've walked a couple of K and all the rest of it. So is it worth every 3-4 years dropping 400-500 quid on a device that has questionable value to you? Really? I don't know. I think that sort of classic timepiece thing, it might be something I need to explore a little bit more as well, just because I don't know if I want to just default drop a bunch of money to Apple in the next hardware cycle. Yeah,
I can understand that. So for me, I think I was intentionally trying to have less devices and less notifications and less interruptions, and I already had some good classic watches, so I've gone back to wearing those, but also I find with all the data, I don't actually look at the data. I don't historically go back and look at it, and so I wasn't that fussed about collecting it. The only thing I do on my phone is just make sure I've done a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. It just makes me sometimes, oh look, I've barely moved today, I'm going to go for a walk at lunch, or I'm going to go out in the evening. But I run quite a lot now, so actually counting my steps has become less of a thing I need to worry about, because if I've done a 5 or 10k run, I'm good. I know I'm all right, and like you say, you've moved, but because I'm not going back and looking at the data, I haven't really missed the Apple Watch at all, to be honest.
You've just reminded me. Good luck to everybody doing the London Marathon today.
Oh yeah, London Marathon.
Good. Okay. Should we do an app of the week?
Yeah, let's do an app of the week.
So app of the week this week is Fresh RSS. I talked about this before, but I don't think I made it an app of the week. As part of my quest to simplify, or maybe make more complicated lots of things in my life, I'm always looking for ways to upgrade the flow of the show, how I use my apps and all the rest of it. And I was a big fan of Google Reader back in the day. It was a thing Google would manage your RSS feeds for, so your news reading feeds with. You and I have talked about Reader and Tapestry as are examples of this, where we can just do it. Fresh RSS is a server-based thing that I can run inside of my estate, inside of my home lab, which does all this for me in a very Google Reader-y kind of way, actually. You can even get the same keyboard shortcuts where you can J and K through your stories, but crucially it also links to Reader 4 as well as NetNewsWire. So I've stopped using Tapestry for a little bit and I've gone back to this, and the next part of my story, which might be my app of the week next week, spoiler, is I'm going to start looking at Link Warden again as well for storing our show notes as for interesting stories for the week, because I made a couple of discoveries about the app that I was using, and it's made me question my usage of it, really. It's interesting you sort of start to look to the morals and beginnings of developers. But the Raindrop.io, which is my thing of choice, apparently had a Russian developer, and money maybe being funneled into Russia as part of it and all the rest of it, which is not cool, man.
It's not ideal, is it?
So that has made me sort of scurry around and look a little bit. So I'm not saying that's absolutely the case. I think there was some doubt about it. But even if there is doubt, I don't want to support that in any way. So I'm beginning to look around. So for now, Fresh RSS is the way I've gone back to get my apps for. It's quite a fun experience to spin up a Docker container and sort out all the various bits and pieces you need to do in order to make that safely accessible from your home network rather than being run by some corporation somewhere. Not impossible, just takes a couple of things to jump through. If anybody's ever interested, please write in and ask some questions. I can maybe talk about how that happens. But yeah, Fresh RSS works really well with apps, works really well as a web browser. I can run it internally, externally. I'm really pleased with it.
You are going to be running everything on your own server at this rate, aren't you?
What's wrong with that?
No, I'm not. It's just more the inclination to set it all up and maintain it. That's my only concern.
But, on the broader piece of, I know what news I'm reading then and nobody else is getting access to. I know what links I'm saving then nobody else is getting access to. My data is being synchronized to my computers, so nobody else is getting access. You know what I mean? The broader piece about even maybe one day my photographs, for example, if I wasn't using iCloud, if they were being synchronized automatically to that too, then nobody is using my metadata to train their next generation AI on. It's already out there, let's face it. This podcast goes out there every week, but at the same time, the perception of control switches back to me, and I think that's sort of a lot of the inclination that I'm feeling at the moment.
No, that's fair enough. I can understand that.
Thing of the week.
Thing of the week. So for me, I've actually gone with an app this week, and it is called TV Launcher. And I've been wanting something like this for a while. So if you could click on the middle screen grab, Rod, that would be ideal. I don't know if you can
click in, but it's not. Okay. Nothing's happening.
So basically, all this is just a TV guide. It's an app on my Apple TV. It runs on every Apple platform by the looks of it. It cost me £5.99 in the UK. And basically, you launch it on the Apple TV. You can see all the channels on the left and the time across the top. And you can just tap on something you want to watch, and it then launches the iPlayer app or the iTV app or whichever channel station you want. This is perfect for what I wanted. And it just means now that my Apple TV is a lot more family friendly than what it was, because they can easily see what's on live TV. We don't have any TV aerials in our house, so we just stream everything. And this is fantastic. You can see what's on live TV. So it's very simple, and for £6 it's perfect.
Very nice. So if you click on the program within the guide, it launches the right app so you can see it?
Yep, it just takes you over to the iPlayer app, the ITV app, the Channel 4 app. But it just gives you TV guide on your TV. It's fantastic. I think it's perfect. And £6, happy to pay that money.
Sounds very good. I might check it out. Good recommendation.
Would recommend.
I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@marston.scot. He's also on Blue Sky, and he's at g5maniac.bsky.social. I'm on Marston, and I'm at _CJP at marston.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to the website, click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.